Good morning, church, and it's good to be with you again on Sunday morning online, and we're glad to be with you and have you with us. Pastor Paul will be speaking today, and looking forward to that message. We have a new series coming, and I want to let you know about some things that are going on right now here at the church and school. First off, at the school, we are looking for a teacher. We're looking for an elementary school teacher. If you are one of those or have been one of those and want to maybe put your hat in the ring, we would love to hear from you, or maybe you know somebody who's looking to do that again. We would love to hear from you. We need some help here at school. The next thing, I want to just thank you families that helped with the trunk or treat, whether you provided candy or whether you've been praying for it or you actually have a trunk. I think we have 17 trunks this weekend, and so really looking forward to that, the turnout for that, and thank you to everybody who helped with that. Next thing on our agenda is Man Camp. This is your last chance to sign up for Man Camp. I think we only have like 6 or 7 people going, and I would love to see more men involved in that. Pastor Paul and myself and about 5 other people are going. There's going to be quads and guns and fishing, and who could go wrong with quads and guns? And Pastor Paul will be speaking this weekend that weekend as well. And let me tell you, I went last year and the food was absolutely phenomenal. If you can't afford it, please let us know. We would love to sponsor you, but we would love for you to come. So this is your last chance to sign up for that. And Operation Christmas Child, we have the last 2-week notice. So please, if you're doing that, get your boxes into us. If you haven't got them, come by the church, pick them up. We are trying to get 150 boxes and send those out. This time of this year that we've been in, it would be a tremendous help, and what a blessing to those kids around the world to be able to give them a really awesome Christmas. And finally, kind of on a sad note, we are going to be having a going away party for Loretta Gomez. She has bought a new home and is moving to be with her family, and we just want to love on her and thank her for everything she's done here at LACC and LACS for that matter as well, and just love on her next weekend. So let me pray for our offering and for our service today. Father God, we just come to you just humbled and thankful for just you being in our lives, Lord, and you running our lives, and you being in control over our lives, and always Emmanuel being with us, Lord. And so I just pray for today. I pray for Pastor Paul and this new message, this new series that we're delving into, Lord. I pray that you give him wisdom, and I pray that we would open our ears and our hearts to your word today, Lord. We love you and we thank you, and we ask all these things in Jesus' precious name. Amen.
So, good morning. Another wonderful morning to be able to worship the Lord online. A couple of days before the election, and man, I'll tell you what, is the world in turmoil and chaos? Absolutely. Is Jesus still in charge? Is God the Father still in control? Absolutely. Can we still experience his peace? Yes, we can. But we have that choice. He is the King of peace. He invites us into that peace. He says he gives us a peace the world can't understand. He says that he guards the hearts and minds that are set on him with peace. And so I just pray that over you this morning. And as we get into worship, let that peace come upon you as you sing and declare these songs. So Holy Spirit, come in a powerful way. Minister in the only way you can by the Father's will and the power of the blood of Jesus. Amen. Let's do it.
I count on one thing, the same God who never fails will not fail me now. You'll not fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Come on. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy. All my days, oh yes, I will. on one thing. The same God who never fails will not fail me now, will not fail me now in the waiting. The same God who's never late is working all things out. You're working all things out. Yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will for all my days. Oh yes, I will. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name above all names, that nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name above all names, that nothing can stand. Sing it again. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name above all names, that nothing can stand against. I choose to praise, to glorify, glorify the name above all names, that nothing can stand. Come on. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will. Oh yes, I will lift you high in the lowest valley. Yes, I will bless your name. Yes, I will sing for joy when my heart is heavy all my days. Oh yes, I will. Oh, all my days. Oh yes, I will. For all my days. Oh yes, I will. Amen. When darkness tries to roll over my bones, when sorrow comes to steal the joy I own, when brokenness and pain are all I know, well, I won't be shaken. Well, I won't be shaken. Come on now, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. And shame no longer has a place to hide. I am not captive to the lies. I'm not afraid to leave my past behind. Well, I won't be shaken. Well, I won't be shaken. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Come on, let's break out those chains this morning. There's power that can break off every chain. can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. There's power that can break off every chain. There's power that can empty out a grave. There's resurrection power that can save. There's power in your name. Power in your name. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Oh, my fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Come on, we're gonna sing it. Just the voices. Come on, let's sing it out. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. My fear doesn't stand a chance when I stand in your love. Yeah. With the love of God. So good. All right. Talking about the goodness of God. I love you, Lord. For your mercies never fail me. And all my days I've been held in your hands. From the moment that I wake up till I lay my head, and I will sing of the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. Every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. I love your voice. You have led me through the fire, the darkest nights. You are close like no other, right? I've known you as a father, I've known you as a friend, and I have lived in the goodness of God. All my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. And all my life you have been faithful. And all my life you have been so, so good. Every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. And I will sing of the goodness. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. With my life laid down, I surrender now. I give you everything. Your goodness is running after, it's running after me. In all my life you have been faithful. Just the voices now. In all my life you have been so, so good. With every breath that I am able, and I will sing of the goodness of God. Yes, I will sing of the goodness of God. So good, Lord.
All right, good morning, church. It is the first Sunday of the month, so we're going to be celebrating communion together as we traditionally do. I want to read from 1 Corinthians chapter 11, but I'm going to jump back a few verses before the traditional communion verse. Come back with me to verse 18. Paul says this. He says, "For in the first place, when you come together as a church, I hear there are divisions among you. And I believe it in part, for there must be factions among you in order for those who are genuine among you to be recognized. When you come together, though, it's not the Lord's Supper that you eat. For in eating, each one of you goes ahead with his own meal. One goes hungry, another gets drunk. What? Do you not have houses to eat and drink in? Or do you despise the church of God and humiliate those who have nothing? What shall I say to you? Shall I commend you in this?" He says, "No, I will not commend you in this." We've talked enough about the Corinthians for you to kind of know what's happening here, but Paul's pointing out a lack of unity in the Corinthian church. They're not acting in kindness toward each other. They're not acting in love. They're selfish. They're divided. They're all camped up in their little groups. I just want to take this moment just to remind you on this last Sunday before an incredibly contentious election, that through communion, Jesus is calling us to be unified by his death, by his burial, by his resurrection. No, we don't all think the same way about all the issues. Like the Corinthians, we have our loyalties, our opinions, our factions, but communion should be the thing that reminds us of our bond in Jesus Christ, and that is stronger than anything that might tear us apart. Amen? So no matter what happens on Tuesday, whether you're red or blue, the truth is that because of the cross of Jesus Christ, we are all washed white as snow, and that's our bond. Paul wanted the Corinthians to let go of the selfishness, to let go of the division before they come together. And that's my prayer for us today. So with that, why don't we go ahead and take communion together? Paul picks up in the very next verse. He says, "For I received from the Lord what I also delivered to you, that the Lord Jesus, on the night when he was betrayed, took the bread, and when he had given thanks, he broke it and said, 'This is my body, which is for you. Do this in remembrance of me.'"
You can take the bread. And Paul says, in the same way, Jesus took the cup after supper, saying, "This cup is the new covenant in my blood. Do this as often as you drink it in remembrance of me. For as often as you eat this bread and drink this cup, you proclaim the Lord's death until he comes." You can take the cup. God, as we come together as a church this morning, whether we're at home or gathered here in this building, God, that we would remember the unity that you have called us to as Christians. And we don't know what this week is going to look like. We don't know what the next several months are going to look like, what's going to unfold. But we know that we're united in Christ. We're united by the blood of Christ that has washed us white as snow. Thank you for your sacrifice for our good and for our eternal lives. I pray this through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Thanks for celebrating communion with us. It's a good thing to be reminded of the unity that we have in Jesus Christ. Amen. Listen, before I get started, a couple of things. First of all, didn't Kevin do an awesome job last week? It was just so good to go back, see all those things that we've been through in the context that God was with us. And he's right. We're here. We're alive. We're kicking. And that's because the Lord has been by our side the entire time. One other thing before we get started on the message today. Ooh, I just touched my mic. Hopefully that didn't scare anybody. Anyway, I'll give you a quick LifeWater update. We are only about 32 people away from reaching our goal of 200 people. We've had a little over $10,000 come in. I'm still convinced that there are 32 of you that are sitting out there that still need to jump on board with us. Remember, $65 a person to sponsor someone in Kokosa, Ethiopia, and bring them clean water. So let's do this. We got the t-shirts in. They're here. We'll be handing those out at church this Sunday if you ordered one. If you ordered one but you're not going to be here, let us know. We'll find a way to get that to you wherever you might be. And then if you want one but you didn't order one, then you're going to have to wait until Monday to see if there are any extras. I'm not sure how that's going to play out on Sunday, and so check with us on Monday if you're interested in that. All right. I am super excited to be launching our new sermon series today. We've been preparing for this for some time now, and I can't tell you what a breath of fresh air it's been just to get dig deep back into the scriptures like this again. It's been a little while since I've really studied and learned new things. Today might feel like drinking from that proverbial fire hose as I introduce the series. It may feel a little bit more like a classroom than a sermon, but I'm going to try to distill it down so it's not too overwhelming. But the path might get a little windy and hard to follow, but stick with me. I'll eventually get us to where we're going. So stick with me through it. Hopefully this, though, will bring Elijah and Elisha's stories to life. So that when we actually read them starting next week, you're going to be able to enter into those stories yourselves and feel like you really know what's going on. So I want to start by going back to our awesome little timeline so that you know where we are in the story of Israel. I miss this little dude. I love timelines and maps, as you know. I'm kind of a nerd that way. But this just helps me get a visual for what's going on, because we need to know where we're at in the Old Testament, because that also plants us in this larger story, a meta-narrative, they call it, of God's redemption that is being played out even as I'm speaking to you today. So I'm going to say something that's not going to be at all interesting to you that will hopefully eventually become interesting. Elijah and Elisha are two prophets who come onto the scene in the northern kingdom of Israel between the years 875 and 797. Okay, that statement doesn't do anything for you, but I'll tell you right now, it is packed with goodness. It's kind of like a calzone. It's kind of boring on the outside, but then you get to the pepperoni and cheese. Anyway, all right. Look at the timeline. I want you to look at the timeline labeled Two Kingdoms. You see that? That's where Elijah and Elisha's story takes place. That's where they live. And they're prophets to something called the Northern Kingdom of Israel. All right, before we go any further with the timeline, I'll be back to that in just a second. Remember, it's going to get windy. flip your timeline over for a second. Their story is captured on the backside under the historical books in the book of Kings. You can see the book of Kings. It's broken into 1st and 2nd Kings, but originally it was just all one book. The book of Kings is in a section of the Old Testament known as the historical books. And that's exactly what they are. Nothing complicated about it. They tell the history of Israel. They're not a lot of laws or poetry or praise or anything like that. They're just telling the narrative, the story of God's people. Now, Elijah and Elisha are prophets in the book of Kings, and they fulfill a very unique role there. There are other prophets in Kings, but I'd say a disproportionate amount of time is spent with Elijah and Elisha. In fact, about 15 of the 47 chapters in the full book of Kings is devoted to Elijah and Elisha. They're only on the scene, just time-wise, for about 80 years of the 400 years that is covered in the book of Kings, but they take up almost a third of the narrative. In other words, the stories of Elijah and Elisha are incredibly important to the writer of the book of Kings. Now, we don't know who that is. It's a mystery. They're anonymous. But whoever they are, they spend a lot of time focusing in on these two prophets. And scholars kind of speculate that the reason for that is not necessarily so much who wrote the book, but when they wrote the book, when the book of Kings was written. So go back to your timeline here. This is going to help us kind of keep things in order. Kings was likely written during this time right here, called the Babylonian exile. The history that was recorded in the book of Kings goes about halfway through that period of Babylonian exile. But it doesn't talk about, the end of the Babylonian exile, Israel's return to Jerusalem when the exile ends. So likely this entire history was written down by a Jew while they were in exile. The Babylonian exile, in case you don't know, is just a really miserable period in the history of Israel. You can read the book of Lamentations if you want to hear some of the suffering coming out of Israel at that time. This was a period of about 70 years when Nebuchadnezzar, Babylon, remember, take the people of Israel captive. This is the story of Daniel. They're forcibly removed from Israel and they're relocated in Babylon. For 70 years, they're not allowed to return. And so during that period, that's when the history of Kings was written. So whoever wrote that history down wrote it as they're living through the consequence of this open rebellion to God. This was, in fact, what the Babylonian exile was. It was a consequence of Israel turning their backs on God. Matter of fact, you can write that on your outline. It was a consequence. So it makes sense that they might focus in on the message of the prophets that were trying to warn them. The prophets were trying to warn them of something that was coming. Throughout the Bible, people tend to they really hate prophets. Prophets are killed and they're outcast and they're despised. No one really likes a prophet. But the truth is that prophets are actually God's gift to humanity. Because, when you're headed toward a cliff, it's a kindness when someone screams stop, right? Or puts up a sign telling you to not go any further. Nobody really blames a guardrail for being too confining, right? So the writer of Kings, as he's living through the exile, has the hindsight to kind of look back on Elijah and Elisha, even though they may have been despised during their day, and say, someone was warning us the entire time. In fact, we should have seen this coming. There are a lot of things going on in Israel as Elijah and Elisha come onto the scene that should have been, to people who were paying attention, red flags. I want to just tell you about a couple of them on your timeline. Look back at this period labeled United Kingdom. It's right there. So this is before Elijah and Elisha. I told you this is going to get a little tricky, so hopefully the timeline will help you keep all this organized. But this little section is going to be reviewed for some of you. But in case you don't know, or if you forgot, I want to tell you the story of Israel that leads up to Elijah and Elisha. Remember, they were on the scene starting in the year 875. So we're going to jump back about a little over 100 years before Elijah and before Elisha even come onto the scene. About the year 1010 BC, King David becomes the second king of Israel. We all know King David. He assumes the throne after King Saul. He reigns in Israel for 40 years until he dies. In 971 BC, then, his son, whose name is King Solomon, takes the throne, and he reigns for about 40 years too. So between David and Solomon, this is known as, people call it Israel's golden age. Great things were happening in the kingdom of Israel. The kingdom was united. There was unprecedented prosperity. The temple was built in Jerusalem in 953. And all this blessing that falls on Israel was a result of being faithful to God. Everybody's always looked at that era as sort of the pinnacle of Judaism. Even Jews to this day, they want a David-like or a Davidic king to rule and restore Israel to her prominence. But they're never really able to get back to that. Most of you know the story of Israel, of the Old Testament. You read through the Old Testament. Israel's faithfulness to God, it comes and goes. It doesn't last. And this is one of the times that it really goes. At the end of his reign, David's son, King Solomon, once considered the wisest man on earth, basically abdicates his power, abdicates his authority, prosperity, the blessing of God to the gods of his foreign wives. At the end of his reign, Solomon builds, even with the temple in Jerusalem still functioning, he builds other temples to foreign gods to please his foreign wives. And if that's not bad enough, he starts to instill some really oppressive taxes on the people of Israel. He forces them into labor, the people of Israel. And so when 931 comes, after his 40-year reign, Solomon dies, and his son, a guy by the name of Rehoboam, he takes the throne. The people come to Rehoboam and they're like, hey man, your dad was miserable at the end. He really laid a heavy yoke on us. Lighten our load and we'll serve you, is what they say to Rehoboam. But Rehoboam goes, he seeks some poor counsel, and he goes back to the people of Israel and he's like, you thought my dad was bad? Basically, just wait to see what I have for you. So this causes this big church split, right, in Israel. People don't like Rehoboam. So 10 of the 12 tribes of Israel, under the leadership of another Boam, a guy named Jeroboam, the Boam boys, they revolt. They established this rival kingdom called the Northern Kingdom of Israel. The two remaining tribes, Judah and Benjamin, remain united as the Southern Kingdom, or the Southern Kingdom of Judah is what that's called. So you have these two kingdoms now set up that caused by the split by Jeroboam. In 931, you can see it on your timeline, you see that fork in the road. Israel is divided now into two kingdoms, and from that point forward, both of the kingdoms, northern and southern kingdoms, would really struggle to remain faithful to God, but especially the northern kingdom of Israel under Jeroboam. And I won't go too far into the story of the northern kingdom, except to say that if you look at your timeline, you can see they don't last very long. They're destroyed. The Assyrians, who we've talked about recently, in 721 come in and wipe out the northern kingdom of Israel. But that shouldn't have been a surprise. So God made a statement. Deuteronomy 17, he says, listen, when a king sits on the throne of Israel, he shall read the law, learn to fear the Lord, not turn aside from the commandment either to the right hand or to the left hand. Here's a little verse for those of you who have no political affiliation right now. So that, listen to the promise that God makes to the one who sits on the throne of Israel and follows God. He says, so that he may continue long in his kingdom, he and his children in Israel. Right? So for the king who sits on the throne and who fears the Lord and obeys his commands, he will sit long on the throne. So what God's saying, man, if you want to remain on the throne, if you want me to continue to bless your reign, then follow my commands. Be obedient, offer your whole life to me. And right off the bat, man, as the northern kingdom gets established, God is not a priority for them. Jeroboam rebuilds some Canaanite shrines. He also kind of wrestles with this weird insecurity because the temple where the Jews worship is in Jerusalem, which is no longer in his kingdom. It's in Rehoboam's territory in Judah in the south. So Jeroboam says, I don't want my people going down there, because if they go down into Rehoboam's kingdom, they're going to turn back to Rehoboam and they're going to pledge their allegiance to him. So what Jeroboam does right off the bat, in the very beginning of this northern kingdom of Israel, he has these 2 golden calves built. He says, man, you guys have gone down there long enough. And he lifts the 2 golden calves up. He says, here are your new gods, O Israel. These calves brought you out of the land of Egypt. And so he establishes these 2 calves as the object of worship. He says, this is your God. This is the one who brought you out of Egypt. And he puts one down in the southern tip of Israel in a place called Bethel, and one in Dan in the north. And these become the new places of worship. You can read about this in 1 Kings chapter 12 if you're interested. That was just the beginning. King after king in the northern kingdom turns even further away from God. With each passing king, Israel drifts further from the Lord. Look at this chart. It should be up on your screen right now. There was not one good king in Israel. This has nothing to do with whether or not they were good leaders or good administrators. It just has to do with whether or not they followed the Lord. And so God sends prophets to remind them of what he said, to remind them of Deuteronomy 17, to follow his commands, to not turn to the left or to the right. So let's go back to our calzone statement. Is boring on the outside, but when you start to dig into it, it has a lot more depth. The statement was, Elijah and Elisha are 2 prophets who come onto the scene in the northern kingdom of Israel in 875 BC. So we know what the northern kingdom of Israel is. We know that we're only about 55 years after the split in Israel. We know a little bit about what was happening in the northern kingdom, what it's like. And enter Elijah and Elisha as prophets of God. This is why I chose this image for this series. It's a dangerous thing to be a prophet. The history of God's prophets is a history of persecution. Most of the time, people respond to God's word with hostility, with rejection, with anger, because God's going to place a demand on us. It's going to tell us that He's going to tell us that we're not autonomous. And people usually would rather attack the messenger than actually heed the message, you know? You put your life at risk as a prophet. And God wants Elijah, especially right off the bat, to step into the kingdom of Israel and to tell them, listen, if you're not going to follow me, then do not expect that I will continue to protect and rain down blessing on you. If you're not going to follow me, then do not expect that I will continue to protect and rain down blessing on you. Listen, I said it before, I don't want to be a prophet. Prophets get beat up. But when you look around at our world today, you have to at least consider that we are starting to feel the consequences of turning our backs on God. If you're not at least considering that, I don't think you're being honest. See, when God speaks in the Bible, whether it's through a prophet or through his written word or through Jesus Christ himself, he's not playing around. Matter of fact, number 1 on your outline today, there's only 2 fill-ins. Number 1 is God's not kidding. He's not just up there making jokes, issuing empty promises. God is, we teach our kids to say this, God is who he says he is, and God will do what he says he will do. He's issued the kings of old and 21st century America the same call, and that is for our lives to be completely sold out for him. He asks for our complete and utter devotion. In fact, our theme verse, I put it on your sermon notes. If you want to look at 1 Kings 18:21, you'll hear the context of this verse in a few weeks. But Elijah comes to the people and he says, how long will you go limping between 2 different opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. But if it's Baal, then then follow him. And then it says, and the people did not answer him a word. I don't know, man. I feel like the more I study these prophets, my own little, my own little inner prophet wants to just come out. But I'm not going to do that to you. I'm not here to beat you up. But I do believe that fence sitting is going to be less and less of an option with each passing year until the return of Jesus Christ. And if you're sitting on the fence today, this series might make you a little uncomfortable because Elijah and Elisha are not going to give us the luxury of being undecided voters this close to the end, right? The vote is Tuesday. Pick a side already. Either it's going to be following God or it's going to be following something else. So for us today, the question should ring loud. Like, how long will we go limping between two different opinions? If God is God, follow him. If something else is our God, like our culture, or our feelings, or our prosperity, or our careers, if that thing is God, well then by all means, follow that, Elijah is going to say. But if God is God, then follow him. All right, let me do one more thing before I close it up and end today. And I'll see if I can't give you something a little more to go home with than a bunch of history, although I hope that was helpful, especially as we get into the story next week. But I want to just introduce you to Elijah really quickly. Next week, Matt's going to pick us up and get us going into the narrative. But today, I just want to read the first 8 words of 1 Kings chapter 17, verse 1. And I'm just going to look at the first half of it. It says, "Now Elijah the Tishbite of Tishbe in Gilead." Okay, stop there. We're not even going to get a full verse into it. You're going to be happy to know that there's almost nothing to say about Elijah before 1 Kings 17:1. Elijah just kind of pops onto the scene with this sort of surprising abruptness. There's no maps to even show you where Tishbe is, what a Tishbite is. No one even knows the location except that somewhere in Gilead. There's no family pedigree to tell you about. There are no references to clan that kind of help us place him in the correct social circles in Israel. He's not a spokesman for any group. Before 1 Kings 17, there is no mention of Elijah. There's no fame, there's no notoriety, there's no political clout, no credentials, no alphabet soup of academic degrees, following his name. There's nothing to commend him yet. Number 2 on your outline, Elijah's big qualification was that he was a nobody. Seriously. And you need to remember that about Elijah as we start to read his story, because it's just another reminder of the hundreds throughout the Bible that God doesn't choose people the way that we choose people, right? Although, and just a little side note here because it made me chuckle, we do see a little biblical pattern in the way that God chooses people, and it has to do with fashion. You may not believe me on this, but 2 Kings chapter 1 verse 8 describes Elijah. It says, Elijah wore a garment of hair with a belt of leather about his waist. Does that sound like anyone? Yeah, this is what I would call a biblical fashion trend. Matthew chapter 3 verse 4 says, now John the Baptist wore a garment of camel's hair and a leather belt around his waist. So just to give you a heads up, if I come into church next Sunday and I got a garment of hair on and a leather belt around my waist, it's just because I'm trying to get onto God's list of weird prophet dudes. That's what I'm trying to do. Anyway, that's a total side note. Sorry, I went down that little path, but I want to make sure you get the big point. The main point is that Elijah is going to speak truth to kings. But he doesn't have any qualifications for doing so, except his undying devotion to Yahweh. Paul writes in 1 Corinthians chapter 1, he says to the Corinthian church of all people, he says, "For consider your calling, brothers. Not many of you were wise according to worldly standards. Not many were powerful. Not many were of noble birth. But God chose, you know this, what is foolish in the world to shame the wise. God chose what is weak in the world to shame the strong. God chose what is low and despised in the world, even things that are not, to bring nothing to nothing things that are, so that no human being might boast in the presence of God," is what Paul writes to the Corinthians. God uses the foolish things in the world to shame the wise. If you walk out of here today thinking that you're not enough. You're not smart enough, you're not good looking enough, you're not dressed well enough, you're not financially stable enough, biblically versed enough, cool enough, brave enough, together enough to have any impact on the kingdom of God, then you're not picking up what I'm trying to lay down here, what God is showing us through the prophet Elijah. I think far too often as Christians, we think that the best and the most powerful moves of God are brought about by these famous preachers and celebrities and influencers and dare I say, in this week, politicians and Supreme Court justices. Election day's on Tuesday, but God's plan for the redemption of humanity is not hinging on who wins. A president does not determine the faith of a nation. The people do. You do. Sometimes as Christians we want to say, well, we don't say it, but we think it. So the next president's really going to be the one who advances the kingdom of God. Like the whole thing is riding on that one person who has the notoriety, who has the fame. But the truth is that today, it is not a single politician or a famous person, but it is millions upon millions of us, of normal, everyday people who God is using to bring redemption to this world, to this broken world. And if you don't see yourself as part of that movement, as part of the huge tide of everyday people, then you've never stepped into the life that God has called you into. It doesn't matter if you're young or old. Even now, we're trying to instill in our 11-year-old daughter a sense of purpose for the Lord. That even as an 11-year-old girl, she can walk out of the doors of our house and be powerful for the kingdom of God. I hope you're teaching that to your teenagers and to your 7 and 8 and 9-year-old kids. I hope you're reminding your 70 and 80 and 90-year-old parents that God is not done speaking through them either. Elijah is a reminder of that. And that you would speak to yourself, whatever age you are, that you are part of God's plan. He's not looking for fame. He's looking for faith. He's not looking for wealth. He's looking for willingness. He's not looking for renown. He's looking for just reliance. The only pedigree needed to serve God in our world today is our obedience. It is to believe with all of who we are, as Elijah says, that the Lord, the God of Israel, lives, and that you will choose to serve Him instead of all the Baals that might come into your life. Amen? Amen. Let me close this out in a word of prayer. God, I pray that as we read from Elijah, we recognize that you're just not calling the most talented and the best people in the world to come and to do good work for your kingdom, that you're calling anybody who's got a willing and faithful heart. God, I pray that as we dig into the lives of these two prophets, that we would see ourselves in the story, that we would see ourselves as in part of this huge meta-narrative, this huge story of redemption of humanity. It has Elijah and Elisha as two people in it, of course, but it has hundreds of thousands, millions upon millions, billions upon billions, let's just get it right, of people who have been called by your name, who are part of a movement of your people. And that's me sitting here. That is everyone sitting on the other side of the screen watching from their homes. That is everyone who comes to church on a Sunday morning. We are part of a movement. God, give us the courage and the faith to step forward, to love people well as you did through your Son, Jesus Christ, to respond in faith to the problems of our world, and God, ultimately to rely on you for everything. And I pray all of this through your Son, Jesus Christ. Amen. Amen. Hey, listen, one of the things, if you're not here online this morning, that you're going to miss is a chance to appreciate our staff. And so if you get a chance, we have an incredible team of people who have come together over the last 10 months now, 8 months, in just some of the most difficult times that any of us have really been through, and carried each other's burdens. And so if you get a chance, if you know our staff, Pastor John, Pastor Matt, Kevin Castle, who spoke last week, Sarah's our office manager, Becca's our children's ministry coordinator, and Jerry Kendrick has stepped back into the role of principal at the school. Man, just thank them for everything that they do. They're an incredible blessing to me and to, I think, all of you too. All right. Have a great day. Thanks for tuning in. We will see you next week.